All right, welcome my students. I'm Ellie at English Fun Zone, and today I'm very happy to be talking with Barbara Lott. She's an experienced English teacher, and she's worked with Fortune 500 companies, and she's had lots of experience. So welcome, Barbara. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Ellie. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Well, let's start by talking about you and where you're from. We'll start with that.
Okay, so I was born and raised in Philadelphia, and I went to school in the state of Pennsylvania as well. So I pretty much always lived in that area until I decided to move to Prague. So I moved to Prague in 2012, and I've been living here ever since. That's where we met in
Right,
Prague
right.
when you lived here.
What brought you to Prague? What made you decide Prague was the place to be?
Well, it's funny because I didn't know a lot about Prague when I moved here. I really knew nothing about Prague. But when I first made the decision that I wanted to move to Europe, like I wanted to get away from corporate America. So I was working, I had a, very pressure kind of oriented job. And I was just burnt out. So I decided to move to Europe. And initially I'm like, oh, I want to move to Italy. Everybody loves Italy. And I love Italy. And then when I was doing my research, I discovered I can't get legal in Italy. Unless a
Oh,
company's moving you there, it's very difficult to get legal as an American. Then I thought, all right, how about Spain? Because I'm thinking warmer weather, for Philadelphia, it's just like Prague. And same thing, couldn't get legal because there's very high unemployment in those two countries. So I'm like, okay, where in Europe can I get legal? And the Czech Republic kept coming up because of the Živnostenský list, which is basically a freelance visa. So this is because all my students are so curious. Like, why would you leave, the US to come here? Everybody's trying to get to the US and and I said, yeah, I said, this is where I could get legal. But the longer I stayed, the more I fell in love with the city. So I have decided to make this my home.
mhm.
I can travel to Italy, which I do quite often.
Yeah.
I was just there in
I
May.
I love Prague. I loved living there. It
Yeah.
was almost like living in like a fairy tale.
It is. It is. It's a magical city.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
I
so
miss
I love
Prague.
it. hmm Especially this time of year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really nice there.
Yeah.
Now, tell us about what you're doing now as far as teaching. How did you went to Prague? Did you start teaching English in Prague or was that later?
No, I started teaching English in Prague. when I decided to make the move, I knew that I was doing it to teach. I went to school to be a teacher because I had that mixed background. I went to school to be a teacher. I'm a certified teacher in the US for elementary students, like, K through 8, but, kids. And I couldn't, when I got out and I couldn't find a job, I needed a job because you know how it is in America. When you don't have a job, you don't have health care.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and I'm like, and I need to move on with my life. So I wound up getting a job at Xerox, which was the first Fortune 500 company that I worked for. And had a very, I have to say it was very profitable. I made more money than I ever would have made as a teacher. And then and then I went to a pharmaceutical, not a pharmaceutical company, a medical device company. It's called BD. And I worked for them. And then I went back to Xerox. And then that's when I left and came here. When I came here, I knew that I didn't want to do what I was doing in the US. I wanted to teach. So I was teaching. I did have that business background though, because I came from the sales world and I was a corporate trainer at Xerox as well as being in sales. And when I came here, I was teaching adults, mostly business people. And I had a couple kids, like a private student. And then I decided I wanted to teach in a school, so I got a job at a bilingual school because I do have the credentials. I just didn't have the experience as a teacher. So I got a job at a bilingual school teaching in a first grade classroom. And then from the first grade classroom, I did that for 5.5 years. And the
And it
reason
was completely different from working for Xerox to
complete,
going to
yeah,
children.
it was complete, but I loved it. I
Mm,
love working with kids. And it was the first grade classrooms, a lot of fun. A lot of people are like, because they tend to move up here with the kids. I stayed in first grade the whole time. They're like, why do you do that to yourself every year? I'm like, I love it. You'll never have kids as excited about learning as you will in first grade. The kids come to school every day excited to be there.
Mhm.
You just don't get that in any other grade. And I loved it. So I did that for 5.5 years. And the reason that I quit is because my dad had was diagnosed with cancer and needed surgery. My brothers had always taken care of my dad and did everything, which allowed me to live here and not worry about my dad because my brothers could do, did it. So, but they had just gone back to work after the pandemic. So I said, you know what, I'll take the hit. I'll come home and take care of dad. So I did. So I went home and I took care of him. And then when I came back, I was like, I need something more flexible because he's 85 now and he has cancer and he's just not in good health. And I need to have something more flexible. And I think I wanted something more flexible because when you work in a school, you can only take off during those times.
Right.
You only go at Christmas, go home for Christmas those 2 weeks, which of course are the most expensive to fly home during that time. So I wanted more flexibility. And so I decided to teach online. And in Prague, students really weren't not fans of online teaching until the pandemic happened, when they had to go to it and they realized, wow, this is really great. I don't have, I can do this from anywhere, and I can have a teacher because most of the teachers are in Prague. So I even teach students who are not in Prague, that are outside of Prague, but, still Czech, but I do have a couple teenagers. Because one of the things I did at the school too, part of my teaching hours was I used to teach these teenagers who went there and left the school when they were moving on in their schooling to a Czech school. And, they surpassed the ability of the teacher because they were completely fluent. And most of the kids they were in school with were not, because it was a Czech school. So they would come back to me at least once a week. And, so the teenagers keep it fun. I wouldn't want a whole class of them, but I love them one-on-one or in small groups. So I have a couple teenagers that I teach online, and I have mostly business professionals, a couple just students who just want general English, but mostly business professionals. So,
Other than the flexibility of teaching online, do you miss teaching, in person,
I do.
face-to-face classes?
Yeah, I
What do you miss
definitely.
about it?
I miss that connection. It's a little different. I have some students that I, connect with great, on, seeing them every week and everything, but it's not the same as like seeing them in person, and you can do some things a little differently. Some things are a little harder, some things are a little easier. Online, I use more like I'll use, share the screen. And so I'll share the screen with them for certain things. I do still use some books for the business professional lessons. I use books. But then the other students that I have that are not as much into the business, they don't really want to use a book. They want to have more, like they want a lot more conversation in their lessons, which is fine, which I create lessons to do that based on their interest. And I use some presentations. If I find some that are interesting, I'll use those as well. I use a mix of materials. So, but yeah, but when you meet with people in person, there is like a different connection. Now with kids, I definitely did not like when the pandemic happened, teaching kids online. It's just not, because they're, especially since I had first grade, that was really difficult. I had first graders too. Half of them came from our preschool, so they understood English, and the other half were brand new. And the first time we went, lockdown was in March, and so we're like pretty full into the school year. They know it. They kind of know the routine. They've learned some English. The second time we went on lockdown was October. That was not fun. These kids were still getting used to being in school, holding a pencil, like doing those kinds of things, and keeping their attention online in a group for 30 minutes was challenging.
Yeah.
So I did not enjoy that. And I didn't think that they got a lot out of it. I feel
How
like
many were in the class?
so
Online class?
I had 2 first grade classes, and there was 15 in each class, and I split them in half. So I had 7 and 7, or 7 and 8, And like I said, it was with the ones who already came from our preschool and were already speaking English and understood a lot. It was okay. But the other ones, I had to have them do pre-work because I want to practice speaking when they're on the phone with me. And, some parents are great and some parents are, I'm sure they're great people, but they weren't real good about being on their kids, but doing what they had to do before they came to the lesson. And then some of them the kids don't know what to do on the computer, and then parents weren't used to it as well. So, I mean, one mom thought it was a good idea to run the vacuum while I was doing a
Or
lesson.
watch TV.
Oh yeah, or go outside. I see moms running by in their nightgowns. My favorite is when I had a 6-year-old stand up because again, 6 years old, it's hard to sit in a, so we had 10 minutes left in the class. I'm like, all right, we were doing transportation, like, cars and planes and stuff. I said, okay, everybody stand up. And he stands up and he's got no pants on.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got like his underoos on, and I'm just like, but I was like, you know what? He was kind of the class clown. I really don't think I don't think he was trying to be funny this time, but the kids are really good because how I neutralized him is I completely ignored it. So I was like, it's fine. He didn't seem bothered by it. So they were running around their room being cars and being planes and being helicopters, and he's running around the room in his underwear being a car, being like. So I just ignored it, and so did the kids.
That's the best way to handle it. I had a student who's 5 years old and decided to take his laptop into the bathroom, and he proceeded to go to the bathroom.
Oh
and
my God.
and I had to I have my parents, the students' parents, be logged into either Skype or QQ or one of these chat ability to chat with them. And so I sent a quick message to his mother and said, he's in the bathroom, and took his computer there too. And he's showing things that he shouldn't be showing on the internet.
We're watching him go to the bathroom.
And then she goes in, she takes I don't know if she put tape on the camera or something over the cameras, like it went blank. And she sent me a message. Now, her English wasn't that great, but she sent me a message that said, he pooped. So I was like, okay.
Thanks for
But
sharing.
it was a moment of, I don't know what to do. I'm in class. I should take this with me.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you never know what kids are thinking. And usually, again, like I said, at that age, there's no malice with some of the things that they point out to you. They can hurt a teacher's feelings because they don't understand, like I remember I was doing this project with them where I was having them, draw their self-portrait. And then we were using yarn for the hair, and I was trying to teach them blonde instead of yellow because they call it yellow.
Oh, right.
I said, so what color yarn should I use? And they're like, yellow. I said, well, what color hair do we call that? And they're like, blonde. They're like, but you need some black for up top. I had not gotten my hair done and my roots were coming in. By no means is my hair black, but it does look really dark next to the blonde hair. And I'm just like, oh, thank you. Guess it's time for the hair to go to the hairdresser. So yeah, you learn to not, let those things get to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting. They keep things fun. But now I'm teaching adults, and I have my teenagers, and they're always interesting. I have interesting conversations with them. It's, so I like it. I connect with them, and I have a lot of experience in the business world. So I can just, I'm not just teaching the book. I'm using real world experience examples when I'm teaching. So that's how I can do both.
Do you have a favorite lesson?
Yeah, I like lessons where we can laugh.
Okay.
Or lessons where we can just imagine. Like one of my most recent lessons I have is it's never too old to do great things. And
that's a good one.
It's a presentation. And I like it because it's a video about a guy who's ridden his bike all around the world, and he's almost 80. And it's, there's a gymnast, and, the most recent video of her was, I think I've seen her online somewhere. She's now 95 years old, and she's still doing gymnastics. And she doesn't look 95 because of that. Do you know what I mean? Like her body her physical shape is better than she looks more like, like her face. Yeah, you can definitely tell she's an elderly senior, but she's not 95. And her body, how like, old people's skin turns crepey. Hers isn't like that. And it's because of the muscle tone that she has managed to maintain. And I like that one because it's fun, because it, we talk about people that, that, I mean, my dad is one of my inspirations. He worked till he was 80 years old. And, he said it's important that when you get older to not stop moving. Because a lot of guys that I know stop moving. And then what happens when you stop moving, you can't move, so you have to keep going. So yeah, that's a fun presentation to do.
I see that we have 2 people watching at the moment. So
Okay.
hello to you.
Yes.
And I want to remind the students, or if you're a teacher, if you have a question or would like to say something in the chat box, we're here to answer your questions. Feel free to write something in the chat. And if you have a question, I'm sure we could answer it.
Yes. We'll find the time to put it in.
So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
So who is there? Is it anybody that I know?
It doesn't say. Let us know.
Okay.
I see a couple of I see a couple of people that are currently watching. It says 2 currently watching.
Okay.
And if you could type your name in the chat box so we can say hello to you.
Okay. Awesome.
No, unfortunately, we don't have any information.
Okay.
You could be from anywhere in the world.
Okay.
Don't be shy. Give it a try.
Okay. Yes.
You mentioned earlier that you use books
Yes.
for tell us a little bit about what books you use.
Okay, so I actually brought some of them because I thought this, could be
Okay,
something.
great.
So the one that I'm using right now that's probably one of my favorites is Market Leader. This is
I
for
know that
business.
one.
Okay. So I use this a lot. I like this because it's got the key expressions in it and kind of like useful language. Actually, it's called useful language in that book. And then I do use this one, Business Result. Okay. This also is another business one. And that was just what the students were using before. But the one that is using Business Result, she also is mixing in Market Leader. So we're kind of, because I like the Business Result is like very business, and it doesn't teach, key expressions. And it doesn't, when I say expressions, I mean, like idioms and, business phrases, but phrases that are still, a lot of phrasal verbs, because they're always hard. You just have to know them because you can't translate them. So, so I use that. When I was teaching at the school, I used Kids Box, which is
I have that.
Yeah. And then they also used at the school, what was the other one that they used? Because they only used Kids Box in first and second grade.
Flyers? Did they use flyers? No,
there was another one that but anyway, it was it was for the older kids. And then I use there's, like I said, there's lots of presentations online. I'll use Lingua House. I use a website where you can pick any topic and they'll give you like 50 questions on that topic. I use that a lot. That's how I build a lot of my conversation lessons.
I build it. Share that with us.
I will share that with you. Yeah.
I'll put it in the description box.
I will. I build it off. So how I build my lessons is somebody wants a lesson on something specific and I don't have a lesson on it. I will start there, and they're my questions about a certain topic. And then what I do is I go and I look up idioms for that topic, and I look up key phrases for that topic. And I also look up some questions, because some people depending on the level of my students, some of them, and the reason I like the useful language in the Market Leader book so much is that when I find with ESL students, when they learn how to ask something or say something, they stick with that phrase all the time. And it makes their language very repetitive. So I try to teach them that there's like 5 different ways to say the same thing. And it makes it.
They always ask me, why?
I say, but it's important to vary your language, especially because a lot of my students are very advanced. So I think that, yes, in the beginning, it's better to stick to what you know. But as your language grows, you want to get out of that box. and make your language more varied. And so that's
Right.
the whole point of the useful language in the market leader book.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's kind of you know, there's just a couple of books that I use. I also use English File. I like English File because I like that's another thing that I can use to build a lesson off of. In the back, they have those vocabulary banks,
Oh,
and I'll
yeah.
use the vocabulary bank as a basis for my lesson. And then build off of that. I'll add in the questions, I'll add in the key phrases, I'll add in idioms, I'll add in, but that's kind of like the basis of my lessons. And then all of the questions
Mhm.
from the website that I have to provide you with.
Mhm.
Then I'm looking for my phone here. So is there, do I have yeah, let me see. Okay, so I'm going to open up the chat box, just so I can, do that. Also, I do have a grammar book. I use English Grammar in Use.
Oh, I
Um,
have that too. I don't
so
use it, but I have it.
what I find with my students though, is they can do an exercise and get a perfect score. And it's not like, okay, we're done there. They know it. It's never it. Where they make the mistakes is in speaking. So what I try to do is take that lesson after we've done the written and try to use it in speaking, practice speaking.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, maybe I'll take like I teach a lot of my students are interested in teaching in learning conditionals. Conditionals are hard for them.
Right.
And
Right.
so what I do is it's not good enough to just, first I teach them the each conditional, why we use it, how the proper usage. And then I do like, I do start with 0, then first and second and third. Then I mix them all together. And then I go back and I have them create conditionals by giving them a scenario. Okay, you just won the lottery. What are you going to do with that? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, if I won the lottery, I would. You know what I mean? So they have to build it off of out of, not it's not written, it's spoken.
Mm.
So
And
just those types of
uh,
things.
not to interrupt, but your old roomie is here.
In Sweden?
No, you're on right now joining us. I apologize if I mess up
Who?
this name. Sinclair? Is it
Oh,
Michael?
no, Michelle. Yeah.
Michelle
Yes,
Sinclair?
yes, she is my old roommate.
Yeah, she's here. She's
Hi,
watching. I've got a message
Michelle.
here that says it's your old roomie.
Yes, it is. It is. I'm like, which old roommate? I thought maybe you must have meant somebody in Prague. Yeah, she was my roommate back in the US.
Oh, okay.
She was the
Well,
roommate that was never there.
it's a little shout out to her. Hello, thanks for
So hi,
joining.
Michelle. I'll be calling her afterwards to check in with her. Ask her how'd I do.
Oh, you're doing great.
So, awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm familiar with all of the books that you've talked about.
mhm,
Um, I I've used books for kids like Kids Box,
mhm.
Grammar, the Grammar Lab. Familiar
Right.
with that book? The Grammar Lab or Grammar Time.
Yeah, I think I've
This is
heard of both of those. I haven't used them though.
that's the one we used in China was um,
Okay.
Grammar Time, and there was another one that we used. Um, but I, I I haven't used grammar books in a long time because I like to do full immersion courses where we're
Hmm.
using the language, we're looking at a
Yeah.
picture and
With
you know, oh,
kids, I never use a grammar book.
mm,
Like with kids, I used to have my 5 key vocabulary words, and it
oh,
was all about speaking in full sentences. So
right.
they weren't allowed to give me any one word answers. If I asked them a question, what's your name? They had to say, my name is. It's getting them used to talking in sentences and
Hmm.
getting them familiar with the language.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I'm full immersion with children, but
Right.
and I don't teach any beginner adults. I have one
Okay.
adult that's like low, probably lower level than I normally teach.
Hmm.
But most of my students are like B2, C1, so they're pretty high.
Hmm.
So, um, okay, so I'm going to put in here, uh, TELSAJ.org.
You're typing something in the chat box for me, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I just need to make sure I get this right. ESLJ.org. Okay, this is the website that I
Oh,
use.
I
that
use
when
that
you,
website too.
okay, yes. So I love it because like that's where I start. That's my
Mm,
basics. And I don't use all the questions. I kind of, I have it open while I'm going through with my students and I'm picking and choosing the questions that work. But then I'm, from that, I'm putting in like key phrases, putting in questions of how, that they should ask.
mhm,
Um, and then, idioms and those types of things, slang,
mhm,
you know,
mhm.
so
I
yeah.
find it interesting that um, students don't have a problem with sentences. They have a harder problem, or it's more difficult for them to speak or to ask questions. You say, okay, now
Yeah,
ask me some questions. And
that's why
they
I,
draw a blank because
right,
so
that's
many
why I
teachers
said,
say, here's a word, make a sentence. Here's a word, make a sentence. So they're making sentences. Sure, they're memorizing idioms. Great. But then when you say, okay, ask me some questions,
yes.
they can. And I think more teachers should start making students have a conversation where they're asking the teacher questions.
Mhm.
And
I
it's
always,
weird to
that's
say,
why I always have that as part of my thing of how to ask a question.
mm-hmm,
It's like,
mm-hmm,
so for example, I did a lesson on hobbies. Okay, so
okay,
instead of just having them ask, what are your hobbies? You can say I said there's 5 different ways you can ask that question, and you're going to get
right,
different types of answers. You can have what are your hobbies, but then you can also say, do you play any sports? You can say,
right,
what do you do with your free time?
right. And
Just
then ask me,
yeah, right,
right?
right, exactly. So I said, these are how you ask the questions. And then, yeah,
Mhm,
and now you go the back and forth. Okay,
uh-huh,
I'll ask you two. I do that a lot with my more beginners, like these students that I have 2 students that are lower level. Okay. And I do that more with them because they're the ones who my students who are really advanced, they don't have any problems asking questions. It's
mhm,
the other
mhm,
ones that I, have to ask, they're all questions about, it's more about free time than it is about hobbies. But they all are, kind of related to hobbies, but they would never think to ask anything other than what are your hobbies?
mhm.
And it's part of small talk. So that's why I think, what do you do in your free time? How
Mhm,
do you like to spend your time outside of work? Then that's when you get a little more, oh, well, I like to spend time with my family.
mhm.
And it's how you get to know your students as well.
Sure.
I ask a lot of questions that, I always tell them if there's anything that I ask and you don't want to answer it, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
Mhm,
And you can ask me anything.
mhm.
So I do have my students who are lower level. A lot of them practice with asking questions because you're right. It's a skill that's not they don't work. You don't work on it as much. You don't see it in the books as much.
No,
They're
right,
asked lots
right,
of questions, but they don't
right,
necessarily know how to ask questions themselves.
right. And they're
That's why
uncomfortable
when
with
I
it.
teach kids about, you start really simple, like when my name is. So what I
Mhm,
do is when we sit in the circle, I'll say, my name is Barbara. I like the color purple. And I'll pass it to the next kid. And I said, what's your name? They have to say, my name is, but then when they pass it to the next kid, they have to turn to the next kid and say, what's your name?
mhm,
You're
mhm.
getting them into the asking and answering instead of me doing the thing.
Right,
So that's how you engage the kids.
right.
So
Another thing is I'll ask them, did you have a good day today? And they say yes or no. And then you ask them, why? And then I say, okay, now ask me, say, Ellie, what did you do today?
yeah.
Ellie, how was your day?
Yes.
Ask
Yes.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So
And I hope that my goal is that I don't have to keep saying, ask me.
yeah. Yeah. Eventually you want them to show some interest,
Yeah.
and have them start asking questions. So it's
Right,
polite when
right.
somebody asks you, well, after they tell me their hobby, how about you? What do you like to do in your free time?
Uh-huh.
What are your hobbies? So,
What's the strangest question that you've been asked?
well, I wouldn't say it's strange, but I would say the most frequently asked question is
Okay,
how
most
old am
frequently. Oh.
I? My 6-year-olds, they always want to know how old I am.
Ah,
So,
ah, ah.
I don't, as far as strange questions, I don't think I've gotten anything that's really shocked me.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, I do
I had
remember though, I had a boy, he didn't ask me, but he asked the teacher. So I went to school with him for a year. I was an aide.
mhm,
I was a
mhm,
shadow, for a boy who
mhm.
had Asperger's.
Okay.
And we were doing a lesson on health. And the teacher she's a British teacher. He went to one
Mhm,
of the international schools in Prague. and I went to school with them for the first half of the day, every day. And she's doing this lesson on health, and she's a bigger woman. And so Alex raises his hand, and I, didn't occur to me that he would say any. And he says, "Miss Christina, why are you so fat?" It's just like, but like I said, it wasn't said with malice, because a kid at that age,
No.
they're not really being mean.
Right.
They're just, they really wanted to know. And she gave him the best answer I've ever heard, though. Most teachers would get flustered and, make excuses. And then it's like, no, these are kids. She put it in terms. She goes, "You know why, Alex?" She goes, "I like cake." She goes, "I really, really like cake." And that was perfect, because Alex got that. He's like, "Yeah, I
Yeah.
like cake too." He's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
All the kids, they understood. They're like, "Uh-huh, yeah, I
Uh,
like cake." So, it was a great, I thought it was a great answer to a question that I've ever seen it. She didn't miss a beat. And so she could get right back to the lesson. That could have
mm,
derailed a lesson and made it very
yeah.
awkward
True. True.
if
True.
she hadn't put it in terms that a 6-year-old could understand.
Sure.
And he understood. So
I
like,
had
so,
a I had a teenager who was very interested in rap and rap music and writing. He wanted to be a rapper. He wanted to write music. And he asked me to make a list of all the words that you could use for the word butt.
oh, geez.
Bottom,
Booty.
derriere,
Yeah.
behind.
Uh-huh.
So I made a list. He goes, "I already know the bad word." I said, "With it starts with an A?" He goes, "Yeah, I know that one." Okay.
Okay. Well, glad you know
I
that.
know the. So I made the list. I never got to hear the rap song, or I never saw the rap song. I don't know why. I
That
don't
would
know
be
why he
fun,
never showed
though.
or
Do a
finished.
lesson like I have a student right now, the teenager. His mom wants me to start doing lessons writing. She wants me to get him to write,
Mm,
and I didn't know how resistant he would or wouldn't be to it. But I've done it before with a student, and I just tried to keep it where he can write on topics he wants to write about.
right.
And then I focus on the mechanics and things of, like, I talk about the hook,
Mhm,
getting interest, and keeping the, somebody to want to read more.
mhm.
But yeah, it'll be, you know he has an overly um interested mind when it comes to guns.
Oh,
And so
I
I'm
have a
just
student
like,
like that
and
too.
he's not American,
Yeah,
but he
right.
loves
Yeah.
these they what are they called? They're not airsoft. I think they're called
Okay.
airsoft guns. They they
Okay.
they shoot some kind of pellets, these
Hmm.
plastic pellets,
Mm.
and and then just replicas of guns. And he even
Mm.
has a fake um bulletproof vest. He's got a helmet. He's got, like, all, like, he's
Oh,
obsessed with all this
like
stuff.
SWAT.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, how do I, try to, let him show me his stuff and, like, have him talk about it, but but he's just so obsessed with that kind of stuff.
Mm,
Just
mm,
like,
mm.
okay, I really am not comfortable with teaching him about guns. So I refuse to do a lesson on guns, especially being that I am from the US. For him, it's not that big of a deal here,
Right, right,
so
right.
yeah.
Well, I have a student who's 7 who makes paper guns and rubber band guns and those kind of
Mm,
things.
yeah.
When he learned the word gun, oh my goodness, look at the gun I made, teacher. I'm like, oh, nice. He goes, "What do you call this?" I went, "Well, it looks like a rubber band gun." Is gun? Yes, it's a gun. What did I do? What did I teach him? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, you never know what's going to catch their interest.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's true,
so he's
true.
he's got a wide variety of interests, though. So I'm sure we won't run out of things to know, ideas of things he can write about. So
That's true.
yeah. So,
Well, let's talk about our. Oh, I accidentally closed it. Our 10 questions.
oh, okay.
But why did I I had it here and I accidentally closed it. Go
Hmm.
figure. I must have accident. I did. Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes I do that when I'm teaching too. I'll accidentally close something.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, I've done
Uh,
it.
anyway, okay. I know the first question is, what's your favorite word in English? Let's start with that.
Okay. My favorite word in English is wanderlust.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
because that's me.
For our students, can you let them
It's
know
a
how
passion
to
for
use that?
a passion for travel. So, um, I spend a lot of time planning my trips because of my deep uh, desire and my deep interest in, oh my God, how do you use it? I never use it in a sentence. I have wanderlust in my brain all the time
There you go.
because I just have this. For me, that's my passion. Is my passion, and what prompted me to move to Europe. I love European culture and history, and I spend my free time traveling.
Mm. And you
So
travel quite a bit too.
I
I follow
try.
you and I see a lot of.
Yeah, I try. I'm
Yeah.
actually in the process right now of fulfilling my wanderlust. I'm planning a trip to the south of France, the
Ooh,
end of July, beginning of August, and this one will be a first for me. I've been to one small part of the south of France, but this
uh-huh.
is more moving around, really seeing the area. So I'm excited for that. So yeah, so I would say that's my favorite word, wanderlust.
It's a good word.
Mhm. Yeah.
What is your least favorite word in English?
You know what my least favorite word is? Hate.
Mm,
Because I think that people throw that around. There's too much of it in the world.
mm,
And I think it's such a strong word. And I think kids learn it. So I try to
mm.
teach them that I like and I don't like instead of I like and I hate. Because I just
Or
think hate.
dislike.
Yeah,
Dislike.
but so I'm talking. I usually do it when we're talking about things that they can do, like
Ah.
what things that they like to do. So I like to roller skate.
Mhm,
I don't like to roller
mm,
skate. So I teach them the positive and the negative.
mm,
So yeah, but the opposite of like can be dislike instead of hate. I just think hate's such a strong word,
mm.
and I think people throw it around too much. So it should
Okay.
be reserved for things that be used as little as possible. I think
Right.
people use it too freely.
Right.
So that's my least favorite.
Good.
Mhm.
What makes you happy?
Travel.
Yeah. Me too.
An easy one. Yeah. Travel and also like learning about other people. I'm very curious about. That's why I love my students because I like to learn about them. I know a lot about them, about their
Mhm,
personal life, because in lessons it comes up,
mhm,
because
mhm.
it's easier for them to talk about things that they know.
Right.
So I would say travel is what makes me happy though. It's when
What
I'm
makes
at
you angry?
entitled people. I
And for
can't
our
stand.
students, explain, boy, I can't talk today. Explain entitled people.
Okay, so entitled people is people who have this sense that everybody in the world owes them something, but it's not. It's not a. They didn't earn it.
Mhm,
They want things without having earned it. So like trust. Okay, I trust people who earn my trust.
mhm,
I don't just give it out. And I think children, they trust you as a teacher, but you do have to earn it.
mhm,
And if you lose it, it's very hard to get it back. So entitled people don't believe they believe they're above that and they're better than most people. And I that drives me insane because I don't think that anybody's better than anybody else.
mhm,
I think that
mhm.
we're all people, we're all just trying to do our best in the world and do what makes us happy. And just because what makes me happy, it doesn't mean it's going to make you happy, you
Right.
know. But entitled people, because I think that a lot of people, the entitled people that I encounter or see, it tends to be that they're angry, and they're usually not angry at you, but they
Mhm,
have to go out and make everybody around them angry and miserable because they're
mhm.
angry and miserable. So I would say entitled people.
Okay. What's your favorite onomatopoeia?
I would say I don't know. That's one I thought about. I'm like I don't really have a favorite one, but I like jingle. It just
Jingle.
sounds like, yeah, jingle. It's like you jingle a bell and it sounds happy.
Yeah. Jingle, jingle.
Yeah. So that could be a good onomatopoeia.
Yeah. And what's your favorite minced oath?
Okay, my favorite. This was I told you before. I did not know this one. I never heard of a minced oath. I didn't know what that was, and I'm like, what kind of English teacher am I?
Don't
Never.
worry, don't worry. I'm
Yeah,
always learning new words too.
right. So I would say flipping
Flip
instead of
it.
the famous F word.
F-word, yeah.
Kind of fun, you know.
Mm,
I know
mm,
there's fudge and there's and
that's my
there's
favorite. Fudge.
frickin' and all these other things, but I like flipping because it just sounds fun to me.
Flip it. That's
Hmm.
a good one.
Yep.
That's a good one. What profession other than being a teacher would you like to do or
You
attempt
know,
to do?
I wish I had the talent. My dream profession, if I
Mm,
had the talent, would be to be a tr- a like a photographer, a travel photographer, or
okay.
somebody who like, takes pictures and, and creates a magazine
Mm,
or a book or a blog, that
mhm,
kind of thing. But
mm,
I love to take pictures and I can take a decent picture, but I don't have a natural talent for it. So I'd be happy with being like a tour guide, something related along the lines of travel, something that I would do purely for the passion of it.
mm,
I would say teaching though was for me, it was a bit of a passion.
mhm, mhm,
So I'm pretty happy with what I do.
mm,
As long as I don't have to spend 40 hours a week doing it.
mm.
I don't work 40 hours a week.
I don't know if I could be a tour guide because I would be so tempted to make things up.
Oh,
That chair over there, that's where Elvis
mm,
Presley sat down and had an ice
yes,
cream. People
but
take pictures of the chair.
sometimes that's part of the story though, is you're a storyteller.
Yeah.
So I would like that part of it, like being a storyteller. You could say, well, there's a what do you call it when something's not true, but it's like a rumor, but like it's a legend. Okay, so the legend is,
Mm.
so you tell them legends, and that's where. Did you ever see the Friends episode where Phoebe is really against Rachel buying things from what shop is it, like Pier One or something?
Uh-huh.
Until she starts, because she goes, no, you want to go to like a flea market and hear the story about how this guy used this as in his apothecary when he was a pharmacist, and so Rachel started buying things from there that she wanted, and she made up this story about to Phoebe about where she got it from, and she and the owner told her that it came from this, and she had this whole story, and Phoebe was obsessed and found out, but she found out the truth eventually. And she realized that, I like the stuff that comes from Pier One or one of those stores, where they'll have some like neat furniture and little, kind of off the not like your matchy furniture like for your
Right,
house,
right,
this
right.
unique piece or whatever. So
Do you
yeah,
like flea markets?
not really.
Secondhand
I'm
shops?
not, no. And I've learned one of the big changes that I made when I moved here, especially after owning a house and living in it for 12 years and realizing how much stuff I accumulated that I didn't even know I had and didn't know what I was using it for. That I was going to, not stop buying so much stuff
Mm,
and start focusing on experiences instead of things,
mm,
instead of materialistic things. So I live in a much smaller place than I did in the US. I had a 3-bedroom house that I could fill just with more and more stuff. And I mean, when I moved down, I had stuff down in my basement that I didn't. I found a pair of canisters that were brand new, never even opened. I don't even remember buying them. So
mm,
it's like, why do you have all like? I just is like I have too much stuff.
mm,
So I try, as I moved here, I decided I don't need tons of, things that you would get like at a flea market.
mm,
I want things that I use that are
mm.
useful. And I want to spend my extra money on travel and experiences. So
I kind of like flea markets and secondhand shops because it's kind of like taking a trip into a museum.
yeah,
And it's
I
like,
like to
oh,
look
my
around at them.
grandmother had one of
Right,
those.
right. Then that's fine. I've gone to those kinds of places and, I can look around, but I don't want to start buying a lot of stuff because then I'm
Right,
just bringing more, stuff into my house. I already have,
right.
I still have more than I want now that I'm living here. I had to move. I was just like, I look around and I'm like, oh my God, so much stuff.
Uh,
So, but it's not as bad.
Good. Next question is, if you could talk to anyone, living or dead, who would that be and what would you ask them?
So there's a lot of people that I would love to talk to. But what I decided is I thought it would be really cool experience to talk to Nelson Mandela.
Oh.
And I would like to ask him, how did you manage? Because I talked about how I don't like the word hatred.
Mhm.
How did you manage to forgive the people who put you in jail for 27 years of your life and not come out of jail with a lot of bitterness and a lot of hatred in your heart? And he goes, he basically talked about how that would just put him in another jail. He might be free out of a physical jail, but that would be a jail inside of his mind. He goes, so I had to learn to forgive those people and let go of the hatred.
Mhm.
And, so I would really love to see how he did that though, because it's easier said than done,
Mm.
but I think he's right. If you carry around a lot of bitterness and anger, the only person that you're hurting is you're not yourself. You're not hurting the person that feeling goes towards.
Mhm.
So I would like to ask him how he did that though, and how easy or difficult was it, and what was the process? How'd you
Where do
do
you
that?
start?
Because I think he's right. He would have made a prison for himself outside of jail,
Mhm.
in his mind, if he, carried around that hatred and that bitterness.
Mhm.
Instead, he turned it into something good. And, so yeah, I'd like to talk to him.
Hmm. What's the best piece of advice that you give your students?
One thing that I say to them a lot is focus on fluency uh, before accuracy. And because I think so many of my students, especially the ones who started learning, the reason they wanted to learn the conditionals is because they didn't use them, because they're not comfortable using them.
Mhm.
So I tell them, I want you to focus on the fluency before you focus on accuracy. Accuracy can come later. It's more important that you don't be afraid to speak and don't be afraid to use language, because you're worried you're going to make a mistake,
Mhm.
because then you're not going to be able to express certain ideas.
Mhm.
So I always say focus on fluency over accuracy. Focus on, growing your vocabulary, being able to speak about these topics, and don't worry so much about am I saying, because I think that I find with Czech people, they always say their English is terrible as they're having a full-blown conversation with you
Right.
about any topic, and they still say their English is terrible. What? It's because they don't speak perfect. And even if they speak really well and make very few mistakes, with them, it must be 100% accurate.
Mhm.
And that holds them back from
Mhm.
learning language and, speaking about things that they feel like they can't say it perfectly. So they don't say it at all. So
So
that's
don't
like,
be afraid to make mistakes.
don't be afraid to make mistakes. Oh,
And
also,
do
and I also
mm.
like to tell them Google is your friend. Look it up on Google. You can,
I know there's so much information out there.
right. But sometimes I have a student who asks me a grammar question. They stump me every once in a while.
Mhm.
God, how do I explain that to them? So I go into Google and it helps me.
Yeah.
So
I'm not a grammar god.
yeah, exactly. I don't know everything. So,
I'm just an English teacher.
well, yeah. I mean, well, because when you're a native speaker and when you start teaching English, my students when I first moved here were always like, well, "What's the rule?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'll look it up and tell you tomorrow." But
Yeah.
like, now I know because I've been, teaching for over 10 years.
Mhm.
But in the beginning, it was tough because to us, they're back there somewhere deep in our subconscious.
Mm,
But
mm,
we can't bring them up by recall.
mm.
So now I'm able to explain to them.
I completely understand because when I first started teaching,
Hmm.
I had a student ask me, when do we say the and when do we say the? And I was lost to give them an answer. I hadn't thought about that. It was never in any grammar book that I learned
Right,
from, and
right.
it was nothing they taught me in school. And
Mhm.
I was like, well, we say the end, and and Michael is the person you want to talk to
Yeah, I guess when you put
if you
emphasis
want
on
this answer, if emphasis with the. Then I did Google. We didn't have Google.
Uh-huh.
So I asked around. I said, to my coworkers, I said, how do I answer this question? And it kind of stumped them. But the one teacher who was from Argentina, not even
Hmm.
not from a
Right.
native
Not even
English
a native.
country, gave me the answer.
Well,
And I
because
thought, how
people who are
stupid
non-natives,
am
they
I?
really know their English rules.
Yes.
They know
She
English
says,
grammar.
the is with vowel sounds, right? The apple, the egg, the. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But then later on, I had a student ask me, well, it's MP3. That's the letter M. Why do I say I want to buy an MP3? Why are we saying an MP3?
Yeah, that one I knew because it's not about the vowel sound. It's not about the vowel letter. It's about the vowel sound.
Right.
M starts actually with the E. M.
Short E. Yeah.
Yeah, short E. So yeah, so that one too. I came. Yeah, but that you're right. That's a good question because
Mhm.
you're just so used to hearing that rule. Well, you use "and" with a vowel
Right.
but it's
Right.
not with a
Right.
vowel. It's with the vowel sound,
Sound.
and
Right.
you have to emphasize that. The one that
The
stumped me
MP3.
too is I had a student ask me. We were talking about fire safety because there's really not nobody here has smoke detectors in their house because the buildings are not made of wood, so they're not going to burn to the ground if there's a fire. Things inside the house will burn, but the house will remain standing. So, and the walls are not made of, drywall, so they're not going to burn.
Right.
But she asked me about smoke detectors. I was joking about my dad always used to ask me, did you, are you sure you check your smoke detector? I had one on every floor. It was hardwired in out of battery. I said, yeah, I check it every night with my cooking. It's fine. As soon as that smoke, leaves my kitchen and goes right there to that one smoke detector. And I said, so that, my smoke detector goes off. She goes, no, your smoke detector would go on, my English student.
Oh,
I was
right.
like, no, it goes off. And she's like, well, why? It would make more
Why?
sense to go on. And I'm just like, I don't know. I've never thought about it. I had to go look it
English
up.
is crazy.
I know. And I'm just like, well, your smoke detector's on all the time. So what
Mm,
happens is when smoke hits it, it goes off and it makes that blaring sound.
right.
Explanation like that. But I was just like, I never thought about that though. It never
Mhm.
occurred to me that that doesn't make sense, you know, just in your head,
Right.
first time hearing
Right.
it. And I was
Right.
so yeah, I have a lot of students who stump me with questions, and I'm like, I have this one student in particular who does it all the time. And I said, I like that. Don't ever change. I like when you
Yeah.
challenge me.
Yeah.
'Cause he makes
Yeah.
me a better teacher.
Right. 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 Exactly. And when that happens, I make a mental note thinking, oh,
Yes,
I'm gonna look
exactly.
into it a little bit more and find out more about that.
Exactly.
Or, well, the opposite can happen when a student fights with you and you say, no, you can't say that. Well, sometimes, no, you can never say that. Well,
Mhm.
once in a while. No,
No, right, wrong.
never.
Never, never, never.
Never.
Yeah. No, I don't have too many that fight with me, but I have the one guy who challenges me a lot. And he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but what about in this scenario?
Mhm,
And I'm like, okay, that's a good point. And I always get back to him.
mhm,
And if it's in an email later.
mhm.
And but I was like, I like that. I said, you make me think. And
Yep.
so yeah.
Well, it's been great talking with you, Barbara. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences,
Mhm. Well,
and
thank you for
it's
having
been
me
a
on.
pleasure.
It's I'm over here I'm in the Czech Republic in Prague, living the dream. I always people ask me, how's it going here? Living the dream.
Living the dream.
I'm living the dream.
Now, from what I understand, you told me that you are accepting new students at this
I
time.
am. Yeah, I am looking to grow my private students. I work for a couple schools and I have some privates, but I'd like to get some more. So I'm always open to, I don't have like
Any
a YouTube page like you, but I do have availability. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, I think you have
I
my,
have your email address. I've posted
yeah.
that in the description box below. So if you want to get a hold of Barbara, you can do so through her email address.
Yes, yes, that's the best way to reach me, and I'll be happy to,
And
offer.
this is for students online, any age?
Yeah,
So,
I can. I mean, like I said, I'm an experienced teacher. I have that,
Mhm.
hybrid background, I do,
Right.
I don't love to teach very young children online. I
Mhm,
know
mhm.
sometimes that's the only way though.
Right.
And I know how to do it. Um, and but I do teach a lot of, kids that are preteens and
Mhm.
teenagers, and that's fine online with them. And then I can do adults, both general English and professional, because of the background that I have. So
Okay, so
yeah, yeah,
if you would like lessons with Barbara,
yes.
send
Feel
her an
free to
email.
reach out. Yeah, love to hear from you.
And now for teachers that might be watching this, I am looking to interview more teachers. And if you're
Mhm.
interested in doing an interview with me, please let me know and I'll post my email address in the description box below. And, send me your CV or resume. And yeah, all I ask is that you have at least 5 years experience. And that's, you don't have to be a native speaker, just that you have to be
Mm.
a language coach or an English teacher.
Yeah, I have I know lots of obviously teachers because of the field I'm in. So I'll send some of them your way.
That's
And
great.
they all have lots of experience. So
Great. That's perfect because
yeah,
I am looking for more teachers.
okay.
All right, my students and fellow teachers, thank you so much for watching today. And until next time, my students, please keep practicing and thank you for watching.
And thanks.
Bye.